Today, we are continuing our NFL tier list series on the channel, and we are hopping into the tight ends. There was a lot to really dive into here. I don't think there's a clear-cut number one best tight end in the NFL anymore. We're going to discuss that in today's video, as well as some other tight ends that you maybe want to talk about. If you haven't checked out the other tier lists on the channel, please be sure to do so after this video. If you love the NFL and you're not already subscribed to this channel, hit that button. Let's hop into today's tight end tier list. All right, as you can see, I have the tight end tiers as elite, star upside, good, tight end 1, basically that's just starter, tight end 2, tight end 3. You guys kind of get the gist of that. The tight end 3 tier, let's be quick about that. Ben Sinnott, Adam Troutman, and Allen on the Rams. Listen, these guys are tight end 3s on their own teams. I don't think there's much that I have to talk about here. I think Ben Sinnott probably has the highest upside of any of these tight ends, but at the end of the day, if these guys were the tight end on your team, you would be going into free agency saying, we need to get a new tight end ASAP. The tight end 2 tier is a little bit more interesting because these are guys that could be backup tight ends on your team, and that's the role you'd love them in. But if they were your tight end 1, I don't think you're just completely SOL. Starting off with Tyler Conklin. Tyler Conklin's a pretty solid over the middle threat for a tight end. Got some decent speed to him, but oddly enough, the guy just does not have a nose for the end zone. You know, it's interesting, but he just doesn't. Juwan Johnson, solid size, not the fastest guy. Some of the athleticism isn't there anymore, but a decent tight end 2, a really solid red zone option. Daniel Bellinger. Bellinger is actually a guy that I had some high hopes for about a year ago. It seems like that he's just not going to live up to those expectations, but I do think he has the size, the speed, the athleticism that you want. Some of the route running just not as crisp, and whatever the Giants are seeing in practice, he's just clearly not, in their eyes, tight end 1. Jelani Woods. You talk about having the size and athleticism. Jelani Woods has that size and athleticism. I don't know what the Colts are breeding in their tight end room, but to go from Mo Alley Cox and Jelani Woods, like these just monsters of human beings at tight ends, Jelani Woods is pretty solid and kind of a cheat code in Madden if you could elevate him. Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer may be a tad too low here the more that I think about it, but he is the tight end 2 on his own team. And the Raiders, while having him, did make a point to go get Brock Bowers. If you want to fight me on this one, I'll kind of understand. And Will Dissly. Will Dissly was the tight end 1 for the Chargers this year and actually performed pretty well. But I do think in an elite offense, you'd prefer to have Dissly as your tight end 2. Next, we got just your tight end 1 tier list. And please do keep in mind that these guys are ranked in order. So, for example, I think Mayer is better than Woods, etc., left to right. Our tight end 1, you know, this is your starter. You're cool with it. You're not uber excited about it, but they are starting caliber tight ends in the NFL. I got Noah Fant as the bottom of this tier. I think Noah Fant's fine, but again, I just don't think he's put all the pieces together. Decent size, decent athleticism, decent speed, but you know, at the end of the day, he's more of a Madden tight end than a real life tight end, and there's just guys like that. Ja'Tavion Sanders didn't have an amazing rookie year. Maybe he's one of those guys that develops in 2 to 3 years. We see that with tight ends all the time. And then there's just a boom breakout year in year 3. Bryce Young got better as the season went on. So I do have some high hopes for Ja'Tavion Sanders, but going into next season, I just can't have him higher than you know, a lot of guys in the NFL at this point in time. Next, we got Chig Okonkwo. Chiggy is like one of those guys where, you know, he's kind of the Gabe Davis of tight ends, where he'll either do nothing or he could have 5 catches for 130 yards and 3 touchdowns. And you're like, whoa, where did Chig Okonkwo come from this week? He does have really, really high upside games. Just the consistency is not there to have him, you know, really in the top tier echelon of tight end conversation. But you take his best game against other tight ends' best games, and we're having a real conversation about Chiggy there. Tyler Higbee. I wondered how he was going to come back post ACL, and I really think another year we'll get the full picture. Before the injury, you know, I would have told you he was good to star upside. At post injury, he had a decent game versus Philly in the divisional round, but other than that, he wasn't too special towards the end of the year. Just a solid piece. Mike Gesicki, it's fine. Great size. He's got that gritty, but again, I'm not going to be excited or oh my God, we got Mike Gesicki going into next year. Like, let's go. Excited for having him as the starter. The same with Cade Otton, decent route runner, solid red zone threat. Got a little banged up this year, but was a decent option for Baker Mayfield as like a fourth or fifth option on the football field. It pains me to do it, but Kyle Pitts has all the athleticism, intangible size that you'd want, but at a certain point, we all have to come to terms with the fact that Kyle Pitts isn't what we want him to be, and we have to grow up and we have to stop drafting him in fantasy. And then Evan Ingram. I think Evan Ingram's the top of this tier. I think there was a little bit of a fall off. Obviously, 2 years ago, he had a really, really good year. Last year, a bit of a fall off. Is that Ingram? Is that the quarterback situation? I don't know, but I was never the highest on Evan Ingram to begin with, so tight end 1 feels about right to me. Then we got the good tier. These are really, really solid tight ends. Jake Ferguson. I think Jake Ferguson in his role as the third or fourth option in Dallas is good. He has his games. He gets to score touchdowns. Like, he is a good player for Dallas, but I don't view him as somebody who will one day be an elite tight end, a star tight end. He is just a really solid, really, really good player. The same thing that I'd basically say about Dalton Schultz. He is good to great in his role in Houston, depending on how healthy the wide receiver room is. But once you start having to have Dalton Schultz be your number 2 option in a playoff game, and then teams are bracketing Nico Collins, the offense just becomes limited. Dalton Schultz is good, but you need talent around him, and you need teams not really hyper-focusing on these guys in their games. Hunter Henry had some really solid games this year for New England. Hunter Henry is a vertical threat tight end. Hunter Henry can create space, but again, just not a true number 1 option or a guy that I'd be confident even being the number 2 option on a high level offense. That's basically how I feel about these guys in this good tier. Are they good? Yes. Are they guys I'd want to be the number 2 option in my offense? No, they are not. Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith's coming off a Pro Bowl year, so you could tell me that maybe I'm an asshole for not putting him in star upside tier, and I guess I can't argue with you too heavy. I feel like we're a little too far along in Jonnu's career for him to have star upside, and calling Jonnu a star feels like a bridge too far, but he was really, really solid this year for Miami. Vertical threat, speed, he was active in the red zone. Like, he had a really, really solid year. Then we get to this star upside tier, and I put it just a tier above good, but you could argue it's going to be 4 guys in this tier, these 8 guys. If you wanted to swap the tiers and say star upside below good, good above the star upside, or leave it how it is, I'm not going to argue with you too much. It's just how I drew it up. Luke Musgrave hasn't fully put it all together yet, but if you were telling me like, hey, going into a franchise, do you believe in Luke Musgrave? I would say the vertical threats there, the blocking is decent. It's fine, but Musgrave is a solid piece that I think could eventually be a number 2 option on a pretty high leverage offense. Remember, tight ends do take a little bit longer to develop. Next, I got Dalton Kincaid, another example of just a tight end that maybe it's taking a couple of years to develop. This was a first round talent. He's going into year 3. We did see improvement from year 1 to year 2, became a bigger part of the Bills offense, had some games, had some moments, but hasn't consistently put it together so far. I got Isaiah Likely. The opening game of the season, when it was Ravens Chiefs, we thought, is Isaiah Likely like taking over from Mark Andrews right now? I think Mark Andrews probably has 1 year left before the Ravens are like the money. And for 80% of the production, Likely could be our guy. Real speed, real vertical threat, real size, great catch radius, great catch ability, has everything you want in a star tight end. Just doesn't have the full opportunity to prove to us that he is that guy quite yet. And I got Cole Kmet, man. 2 years ago, Cole Kmet had a breakout season, and then last year with Eberflus on the hot seat, Waldron comes in, fired, new OC fired. Like, the whole Bears offense, I'm willing to just, let's get a mulligan on this. Let's regrade Caleb Williams. Let's regrade Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, and Cole Kmet a year from now. If they're still bad with Ben Johnson, then they're just bad at that point. But Cole Kmet is still a guy that I really believe in. I like the strength. I like the speed. The route running is good. He is active in the red zone. I think he really could have a breakout year again coming up in 2025. We got the star tight end tier here. These are guys that are like borderline number 1 options, but probably really excellent number 2 options. Pat Freiermuth. for Pittsburgh, I think he was their most consistent receiving option this year. I know he may not have led the team in yards. He might have. I'm not actually sure on that one, but it felt like he was their most consistent offensive weapon. And whenever they needed a big third down conversion, Pat Freiermuth was the guy to get open. He could score touchdowns. He's got speed. He's active in the blocking game. Like, Freiermuth has everything you want in a really, really solid tight end. David Njoku, a little bit more athletic, maybe a lot more athletic, some more speed, better size, a stronger player, just doesn't, doesn't have the quarterback, to be quite frank. Like Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston, who was the guy that they had to end the year? My mind's blanking on it, but it was an even worse DTR. Get David Njoku a real quarterback, and we might see him hop up to this elite tier above there. I got Dallas Goedert as well in this tier, and Goddard does everything for Philly, excellent in the blocking game, vertical threat. Because of his situation in Philly, I understand that he's not the focal point of defenses, but he's a guy who really on any given Sunday can just rip you apart. Good size there. I got Sam Laporta in the star tier, and I know some people are going to be like, Sam Laporta not in the elite tier, what are we doing here? I just think that he was very clearly swallowed up in the Detroit offense. And I get it. Detroit's got a lot of good offensive pieces, but the rookie year, he took a step back, and I'm still going to have him in star, but I think the elite guys on any team would put up elite numbers. Sam Laporta was kind of more designated to, hey, we'll give you one deep look a game and you'll be a red zone threat. I just don't think that would happen with any of the elite tight ends in football. This elite tier is, I just have to stress this right now, it is inches, not miles, that separate these guys. Any kind of way that you want to order this elite tier, I really don't think I'd argue with you too heavy. So just remember that this is my ordering of it, but you could order it any way you want in the comment section, and I would give you just about zero pushback. TJ Hawkinson. I have TJ Hawkinson here just because it was a little slow last year. He had some good games, but we didn't see those breakout, massive Hawkinson games that we were used to seeing. Yes, he's coming off of that ACL injury. I just, want to see him get back to that point before I give him that, top 5 tight end designation. I certainly think he could get there. And this was kind of just the easy choice for me to be like, you know what? The guy who was coming off the ACL injury that wasn't as hot, let's just put him at 6, and then let's talk about these 5 guys. I have Kelce as the tight end 5 in football. I still think Kelce has high potential games, and we saw it versus Houston in the playoffs. Like, you could have a great game if you're Travis Kelce, but I think the overwhelmingness of him being the number 1 tight end in football has gone. I think some of the effort is gone. Him in the blocking game, I don't know if you guys watched some of those Super Bowl highlights. He is not the pass blocker or run blocker he once was. He's still a decent receiving threat, and I do believe that coming back next year, he's going to be more motivated and in shape, but I just think the days and the years of Travis Kelce clearly being the tight end 1 in football are over. I think he's elite, but I think he's backside elite when it comes to some of these other guys. I got Mark Andrews 1 notch ahead of him. I think what Mark Andrews did in the second half of the year earned him this spot. The guy just couldn't stop scoring touchdowns. And I get it. Baltimore's offense is, was the best in football statistically, but Mark Andrews was a big part of that. Mark Andrews really, really cleaned it up the second half of the year after that car accident. A lot of people forget about that he had to open up the year. Great size, great in the blocking game, great vertical threat. There's a reason Isaiah Likely's not getting the snaps that he would on pretty much every other NFL team. It's because Mark Andrews is absolutely elite. I got Trey McBride here too. Trey McBride was had one of them weird seasons where he just couldn't find the end zone. And to me, if you want to put him back at 6 because of that, I get it, but I think Trey McBride, the touchdown variance there, that's going to head back to the mean, head back to the median, and he's going to bounce back next year and probably have 8 to 10 touchdowns. He was the number 1 option in his offense. And that team didn't make it to the playoffs, but he was the number 1 option in his offense, which I can't say for the guys that I put behind him. Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers came into the NFL in his rookie season and I think became the second best tight end in football. In terms of a receiving threat, he is the number 1 tight end receiving threat in all of football right now. His route running, it's crisp. The speed is there. Everything we thought about this guy as a prospect at Georgia came true in year 1, which is really rare for tight ends. Like, that is a rare air that Brock Bowers is in. Guy could have been offensive rookie of the year. Jaden Daniels had a monster year, but you could have given it to Bowers just for how good he was. He led all tight ends in receiving yards his rookie season. And I still go George Kittle, because George Kittle is the best blocking tight end in football, and I think he is the second best receiving threat from a tight end in football. Bowers pretty much gives you nothing in the blocking game, and you're fine with that. That's why you still have a Mayer on the roster, and it's why he still gets a decent amount of playing time. But at the end of the day, George Kittle's a tight end that gives you absolutely both, and he loves to block. If you didn't watch that receiver show, go back and rewatch it for some of George Kittle's stuff. The guy's an absolute tank in the blocking game, still a vertical receiving threat. And I think with Deebo Samuel out of the 49ers, you're going to see a lot more of their underneath offense run through George Kittle. I have him as the best tight end in all of football. But as a reminder, guys, these are just my thoughts. Let me know what I got right, what I got wrong in your mind in the comment section down below. If you love the NFL, hit that subscribe button. I will catch you guys next time. Peace.